The broadcast is now starting.
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to our next PixelMill webinar. In this month's edition, we bring you 1 week in Orlando, a review of Microsoft Ignite. Oh, what a crazy week it was in Orlando, and we've got some great people to chat with you about it. As usual, my name is Michael Wells. I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at PixelMill. I'll be around. I'll be tracking all the questions you guys can send in. Speaking of those questions, there is a questions tab and a chat tab that you'll find. Feel free to send your questions or your comments in. I'll be keeping track. I will try to interject those as best as I can all throughout the session. For those of you who are more socially minded, you can use the hashtag PixelMillWebinars. I'll be keeping track of that as well, or our Twitter handle at PixelMillTeam. Now, without further ado, I'll stop talking. There's much more important people on joining us today. So let me introduce our panel today, starting with Eric Overfield of PixelMill fame, Eric Atelli of RecordPoint fame, Ryan Schouten of Blizzard fame, and Paul Swider of Real Activity fame. Everybody's famous in this webinar, in case you didn't catch on. How's it going today, everybody?
Very good.
Good. Happy to have you guys. Let's take a second and have you guys all kind of tell a little bit more about yourself. So go in order from left to right. So Eric, let's start with you.
Sure. Hey all, again, thanks for joining us. Eric Overfield, President, Co-founder, PixelMill. Just really excited to have all of us here today. I mean, these are all my really good friends in the community, so I just appreciate y'all joining me.
Awesome. Erica?
Hey, Eric Atelli, product evangelist at RecordPoint, coming at you from Seattle.
Woo-hoo.
Hi, Erica. Paul Swider, and I'm right out of the North Shore of Boston today, and really happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And last, and certainly not least, Ryan.
Oh, muted.
I think you're a little bit muted there, my friend.
Sorry about that.
Ryan knows everybody is soda.
Anyway, Ryan Schouten, Senior Systems Engineer with Blizzard Entertainment, coming to you from Irvine, California. Microsoft MVP and certified trainer.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Happy to have you guys. So let's talk about a little bit what we're going to be doing today. We've got a couple general topics we want to go over, and then I'm going to hand it off to Eric to let him kind of talk a little bit more about this stuff. So we're going to start by talking about a little bit about the Expo Hall. What's it like? How was it set up this year? What were some fun things that people were doing? Then we'll talk about the keynotes. There were a couple different ones that we're going to talk about, and some of the key takeaways from that. Then we'll talk about some of the bigger announcements that came out of this. A lot of stuff with Teams happened. There's so much happened. I can't even start, or I will take up the whole webinar. So we'll get to that. Then we'll talk about some of the stuff that was happening in the sessions. What were people talking about? What were people teaching about? And then we'll get to our Q&A session at the end. So without further ado, let's start with the Expo Hall. You guys, how was the Expo Hall? How was it laid out this year? What were some fun things people were doing? Tell me about it.
Erica, why don't you give us a start? Because Erica, I know you were a sponsor there. I want to know your impressions as someone who is in the Expo Hall every day, most of the day.
Yeah, well, I have to say it was a million times better than last year. I think that we're having all the sessions together in the West Hall allowed people to just kind of stop by the Expo Hall when they had a little time. And then also in the kind of Expo Hall area, they had all of the customer immersion zones, hands-on lab, Microsoft Learning, which is a really cool new thing we'll probably talk about, as well as areas to view the larger keynotes. So I found a lot of value being there. I was able to kind of see everybody. It seems like almost everyone passed through at some point. And there's also just like a lot of really cool things vendors are doing these days to build on top of this momentum.
Yeah, I have to agree.
I liked it as well personally because I remember last year trying to get over to the Expo Hall was a pain. And then they kind of had this kind of like a personality split between the community center and all the vendors. So this year is kind of nice. They kind of lumped it all together, combined it all in. So it's nice and easy to be able to transition from the immersion zones and all these different things and to talk with the different vendors and the product team people themselves and be able to get your questions answered, which was kind of nice for me transitioning from being a consultant or as a recovering consultant, as people like to call that, to being an actual consumer. I was actually nice part was I had questions. I had my own problems I had to solve instead of just, okay, I'm going to absorb it. I was like, okay, I have things that I came to the conference actually looking for. So I think I got more out of the conference this year than what I have as much other times just because I actually had things that I needed questions. I had need to get resolved. So it's not just absorb. It's okay. I'm here on a mission.
Yeah.
I felt the same way. I had very specific business that I wanted to get done with some people in the expo hall. And what was really great was they were there. Like, these were in some cases senior level, product team folks. And they were there, they were there in the expo hall at their booths. And so I was actually amazed at how productive I was able to be. And the other thing I wanted to highlight that I really enjoyed was the community area. I was just amazed at how much space they dedicated to the community, to the learning, and then even, and this was my first Ignite, disclaimer, so maybe they had this last year, but I also really liked the different ways that you could view sessions, that you could actually just sit in the expo hall and view sessions with listeners. I mean, gosh, that's great stuff. I love that.
Yeah, they had that last year, but not in the expo hall. It was in a whole different building. It was like a half-mile walk to get from one to the other, as Ryan was saying.
Why do it then?
Yeah. And so my view on it, that like one of the big values of Ignite in general is it's the networking opportunities. And also helping, as you all said, getting some answers to your questions. So sometimes you have to run the gauntlet of some of the vendors, and sometimes you get the really good ones like Erica and Record Point. And then, but there's also the Microsoft kiosk, and they took up the middle of the expo hall. And as Paul was saying, the SharePoint engineers for the SharePoint side, the team leaders for Microsoft Teams, I know, Paul, you went to talk to like the blockchain people, like the engineers who are building the product are sitting at these booths, these kiosks, you can go talk to them. And so having that now in the same halls where most of the sessions are, like you didn't have to go everywhere. So the expo hall, for those of you who were unfortunately not able to attend, the expo hall was sort of in the middle of this very long hall, and on either side were food, but then there's a community zone after that, which was also powerful for me because I had multiple meetings with people where we could meet in the expo hall and then just walk over into another part of the hall and find some seating to just sit and relax. They had some coffee and espresso and things like that over there. And then past that, they had this big community zone and then the TV so you could watch sessions, and even past that, even more food. I really liked the setup this year, and it provided that central hub where you could socialize and talk to the community and get engaged with the different sponsors that were there to help you solve some of those problems that you might need some help with. I thought it was really, really well done this year.
Yeah, I'd say as well. I think they did a lot better job of positioning because they're saying they had more people there this year than last year, but it didn't feel that way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it didn't feel like crowds and all sorts of things. It's kind of like, okay, it felt like almost smaller, but yet there were more people. So I think the way they managed it set up was really well done.
Cool.
Another thing I loved about the community area is they had one place where they had a giant screen where you could see like 8 sessions at one time. Because sometimes, you spend so much time walking to a session and either it's full or it just isn't what you expected.
Yep.
And so all you had to do was change the channel on your earphones.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? That's Paul, what you were talking about. I just thought it was really cool. I saw one line. It was for the CTO of Azure. His name is Mark Rakovich, and his session was in this big theater they had, and the line for it was insane. And I'd be like, do I want to fight that line, fight for a nosebleed seat, or just go and sit in a lounge and watch a massive screen TV while I'm comfortably sitting in like a lounge chair? Yeah, it was really cool. Cool. Well, let's move on. Let's get on out of the expo hall because there's a lot of cool stuff that happened.
Oh, yeah, there's so much to talk about. All right, thank you guys for that. All right, so let's talk about the keynotes. Satya had a lot to say. Jeff had a lot to say. Take it away, guys. What are your thoughts on everything that came out of the keynotes and everything that they presented?
Let me set the stage and then I'm going to hand it off. So the keynotes happened all on Monday. There was the primary keynote, is an hour long that CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, ran. And then after that, how I look at it, there were general sessions, is what they called them. And I call them like the sub keynotes. 2 in particular I went to was there was a Microsoft Teams keynote followed by the SharePoint keynote. All of this, by the way, is all online. You can go see all of this, all the recordings. Easy way to do that is you just go to ignite.microsoft.com. In our show notes, we'll provide more links to this stuff. But I've got opinions on all the keynotes for sure, but please, let's jump in, everybody. What did you think about the keynotes? What are some of the key takeaways that you had from them?
I'll start.
Go ahead, Ryan.
From For me personally, I liked the Jeff Teeper keynote.
Okay.
Just to see all the cool stuff and all the work that the team's been doing, getting things into SharePoint.
Yeah.
All the cool integrations, the page designs, all these things that we're getting, the news hubs. It's a lot of the asks that we've been having for years to be able to brand and style things we're finally getting. So that one was kind of cool. I did like in Satya's keynote when they kind of demoed the Teams meeting with the people having their meeting and talking in the different languages. Kind of cool. It's like, it was kind of interesting. I don't know if anybody noticed, but there's some time frames where the translation had some funny words in it that I'm pretty sure she wasn't speaking coming out of Chinese. But I was kind of like, saw like, wait a minute, what was that? And then kind of panned off so you couldn't see it on the video anymore. It was like, but still, it's a work in progress, something that Microsoft's working towards. But it is kind of cool, the concept to be able to say, okay, no matter you are a multinational organization, people can speak in their native tongue and understand each other. And it's not just like, okay, well, now I've got to try and figure out how I say this properly in English. They can say, okay, they just speak it, and then that gets translated over and everything's good.
Yeah.
I get it. That's interesting. That I actually started using that translation service about a year ago, especially in my international sessions. And what I found is that the translation from English to the other dialects is really great. And the machine learning is still in the process of perfecting it, coming back, right, from multiple languages. So I agree with you. That's great stuff. It's stuff that I'm already excited to use today. And actually, I might as well keep going. Sorry. So one of the things, I hadn't actually talked about this yet. This is my first time bringing it up, which is a little bit of a surprise, I think, because for people that know me, I do try to be involved with the community as much as I can, and there's a part of me that I would consider myself to be very involved in philanthropy and humanitarian. And so I believe it was the primary keynote, the vision keynote, that they announced this initiative, this OpenAI initiative for humanitarian services.
Yep.
And, the geek in me got really excited about SQL Server and blockchain, and that's what I've been talking about in some of these recaps. And this is the first time I'm talking about this here, but I think this is really amazing, actually, what they've done. And, and if we back this up just a little bit further, let's remember first that when Satya came on board, he essentially, one of the first things he did was directed the research team to give away, right, these 5 cognitive services, these APIs to the world. And a lot's happened in a short period of time with these cognitive services. And I think this is a really great example, right? So now that they've been given a chance to evolve, to be able to make this announcement of $40 million project to inject AI into solving, for example, refugee crises, right? Crises. This is at an all-time high right now. There are more refugees on the planet than there ever been before. And so making use of that technology to try to solve some of these problems, I think that was really great. And again, I think it was in the primary keynote. If you just Google the AI initiative for humanitarian, you'll find information on it. But great stuff.
Yeah, just towards the end of the keynote. Which is one thing I wish they would have covered a little bit more on. He kind of announced that they were doing it, and then kind of dropped off. I was like, what more can we do? How do we get involved with this type of stuff? It would be nice to have some information that way, but it was kind of cool to see that at the end.
If I could just add one more thing, just real quick, sorry. I actually noticed, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but in some of my conversations with some of my friends at Microsoft, I've noticed this theme where they're genuinely more interested in showcasing things that are involved in these humanitarian type efforts, right? These goodwill type things, not just saving corporations money. Are you guys noticing that as well? Because I specifically picked up on this at the conference, Sorry, I'll turn it back.
Really quick, Paul, while you're still talking, there was a comment that came in that you were talking about cognitive services, and I guess you cut out a little bit. So could you kind of quickly sum up again what you were saying about that?
Yeah, essentially, I was just acknowledging the fact that, Microsoft recently gifted the world with these, essentially what started with 5 cognitive services APIs. And from my understanding, they've been working on them for about 10 years. And so I just pointed out that firstly, they gifted them to the world a few years ago. And then secondly, they're building on them. And one of the, one of the proofs of this is the fact that during the primary keynote, they called out a $40 million project to focus on, humanitarian efforts like solving refugee crises, food crises, etc.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really took away from Satya's keynote, as well as the rest of the keynotes, was this idea of just more openness and sharing between data.
Mm-hmm.
So there was, of course, the Open Data Initiative between Adobe and SAP and Microsoft, but also like the openness between different Microsoft platforms and services. It used to be that Microsoft was 100% measured on selling licenses, compete, and getting people off of other technologies. And that's just such kind of a waste of time. Like, we should be focused on getting more value from the data rather than like where the data physically sits. So I'm excited to see kind of that shift in thinking and look forward to seeing that evolve more.
Yeah. I think that open data initiative with SAP and Adobe is interesting because SAP and Dynamics are competitors. I mean, they're both ERP, and it's frenemies. It's, you know, in the technology world, today's friends are tomorrow's enemies, and yesterday's enemies are today's friends, and things shift. And I agree. Let's make the data more free flowing and just produce the best tools and drive that utilization, because if it's good, people will use it. If it's available, they'll do fine. What else, Erica, did you have that you might have thought of on the keynotes, or any other key takeaways that you saw?
I mean, just the continued evolution of Microsoft Teams with SharePoint. I'm glad to see Teams continuing to be that one single pane of glass where you can do all your work while other services are in the background.
Yeah.
So specifically, the ability to have a SharePoint page or SharePoint news page as a tab in Teams, finally being able to add an actual document library and list with the metadata and kind of full fidelity experience. That's all really great.
I agree with a lot of what's being said. I have some, I'll add kind of my views of it, or some contrarian thoughts at least. The primary keynote, I did write a blog post on it at blog.pixelmill.com. It was good, and it was shorter than I expected. It was under an hour long, and it was lofty. It was 80 or 60,000 foot view, which isn't bad. It did come from Satya, so it's like his vision that he's sending out to his primary lieutenants to go implement within Microsoft. So that's a good thing. But it felt almost like not overly useful for a lot of it. Like, okay, cool customer demos, what they're doing, but I think there was some smoke and mirrors in some of it. I felt as though it was more like the Envision keynote. So we didn't mention that Ignite happened at the same time and Envision happened. Envision was an invite-only leadership conference, basically. It's a shorter conference, but it happened right next door in the Hyatt, in the Hilton. And so I felt like it was the keynote for those people, which is great that we got that experience, but I was hoping more for like a little bit of product announcements in the primary keynote. But hey, it was Satya's keynote. It was quick, which was nice. And then we moved on to the product keynotes, which what I call the product keynotes, at least, these general sessions. The Teams one that I went to, as Erica, you just said, like, yes, I love to see how Teams is becoming, I like how you said single pane of glass. It's becoming that central hub where we can now get all of our work done, and it is utilizing all these other services. And if you watch that particular general session, that was my second blog post I wrote at blog.pixelmill.com, was on that whole keynote. The first major demo, the first overview of Teams, by the way, was presented by Jeff Teeper, who's the CVP over at Microsoft, leading SharePoint, Office, and OneDrive. And so I think like the optics of that are pretty interesting, because their first, the person who was presenting the whole session on Teams, this general session, I'm just blanking on her name, she hands it over to the SharePoint guy. And the SharePoint guy is like, hey, look at how well Teams and SharePoint work together, and why SharePoint is the bedrock of which everything else is driven on. I think that was really cool. Love to see what's happening in Teams for sure. Really cool stuff is coming down the wire that I think will really help change the way that, in particular, like the clients that we work with, and a lot of you I think that are watching this recording or watching this live, who've been watching PixelMill, like we try to help our clients communicate, collaborate better within the organization, and Teams is filling a huge gap, and it's a glue that's binding a lot of things together. So I thought that was really cool. Great keynote. If you haven't watched that general session on Teams, I highly recommend it. And then the last one, the one that Ryan mentioned on Jeff Teeper's, he led a SharePoint session, the keynote Monday afternoon. Really great. They went way over their hour and 15-minute allocation. They had so much to show. They were burning through the demos as quick as they could, and they still only scratched the surface. I loved it. My complaint, my issue was they didn't really give us timeline. And I think that a lot of the things we were seeing, they're not ready. So I walked away like, wow, cool. So we have that, right? And I knew we don't, but they didn't tell us when we're going to get that. And I can see that that's frustrating probably for a lot of you that, okay, great. So I hear we have this. When do we have page layouts? No, we don't have that yet. Like Dan Holmes showed what a page layout would look like, and he showed that you've asked for this, and see, you can pick your page layout, and there was like an advanced page layout, but nowhere did we get the timeline. And so my one complaint there is I wish we had a stronger timeline that was presented there, but they so filled up the session, then they could have gone another hour or 3 by trying to provide more of those guidance. So to me, the big takeaway, SharePoint is improving, it's continuing to, or evolving is a much better word, and it's continuing to evolve. We're going to get the stuff that we've been looking for. Patience. And I'm just excited that they're actually doing the work that we've been asking for and that they've been saying they'll do. So really great progress.
Although Chris McNulty, who's on Dan Holmes' team and manages content services, he does an amazing job of releasing a detailed timeline about everything he talks about in his presentations. So at least for the content services and kind of list stuff we have those dates.
Well, I think a lot of the roadmaps have come out since, correct? All over the place. To me, they're not scattered, but they're not. I just wish that they were in the session, and I felt as though I didn't hear that, and I could be very wrong as well. If you want my recap,
actually, Sue Hanley has a really great PowerPoint she put out on Twitter of all the roadmap slides in one place. It's a really
we will need to include that in our show notes. Yes. Monday morning, I get into the office and basically kind of like my whole team was all they all noticed it and just like, oh my gosh, you see what Sue did? So I didn't. Yes, that's a good point. We'll find a link to that somehow. Or Michael, if you can get that and put it in some comments for us here, that would, I think, really be cool. Microsoft is being very transparent. Don't get me wrong. I just wish the keynote had more of that because not everyone's going to watch all that other stuff. It would have been nice to have seen it, but. Really great stuff is happening.
It was kind of sad not seeing Satya geek out this year.
Yeah,
he's a very technical person, and so it's kind of sad and not allow him to be able to. One of the things kind of interesting at Blizzard, one of our values is embrace your inner geek, and he didn't get that opportunity. I think as part of that keynote, he's talked about some cool stuff, but he didn't really get the opportunity to talk about this really cool stuff. And last year we had all the quantum computing and all these other stuff. He had time to talk about stuff. He actually had some time to kind of, you see him kind of light up a little about the stuff he's passionate about. This time he seemed a little more subdued.
Yeah.
Well, I think there was some opportunity there with SQL Server. You know, I have to remind myself sometimes that regardless of which SaaS offering we're talking about, whether it's, you know, Dynamics or SharePoint or Power Platform, you know, at the end of the day, this stuff still lives in SQL Server.
Sure.
I mean, really, I tell people more and more, from my perspective, the biggest difference between Dynamics and SharePoint really is just that one abstracts the data as a list model and the other one using an entity model. But both of them, at the end of the day, both of them store their data in SQL Server. So SQL Server is still a really critical component of all of the SaaS offerings.
Yep.
And this new release had some big news in it, right? The inclusion of Spark and NoSQL stuff. You know, certainly building on the decades of work that they've already done. So yeah, I was surprised that maybe that would have been a good moment for him to geek out, if you will. You know, certainly it wasn't quantum, but SQL Server is still pretty cool. I think so.
Yeah, there really wasn't any product that I really recall in the primary Satya keynote. He didn't really talk to me. I didn't hear really anything. He left that to all of his lieutenants, which I get that. It was a visionary keynote, and I do appreciate that he provided his vision for technology for the next 6 to 12 months. Like, that was to me pretty important.
And he did mention blockchain once. He actually did talk about blockchain technology.
Paul and my little side topic. Well, my side topic, one of Paul's big topics, yes, blockchain. Yeah, I saw it too. It was, gosh, I forgot the demo. Was it Eli Lilly?
It was Bueller.
Okay.
It was a mix of blockchain, AI, machine learning, and cognitive services. Great demo.
Funny.
Hey, Paul, how many buzzwords can you throw in there?
Yeah, exactly.
I got my bingo chart's pretty cool.
Microsoft.
Cool. What was the next one there, Michael? Or because I've got a lot more questions still as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you guys for all your inside thoughts on the keynotes and some of the stuff that came out of that. Next, we're going to talk about kind of just some of the big announcements. What were the big things that came out? And I know you're all chomping at the bit to talk about this. The five of us were all talking before this, and they just started getting on a roll, so I know they're all excited. So let's just jump into it. What's the buzz? What's happening? What's all the big stuff that's coming out this year?
Don't all jump in.
Well, I was really excited to finally have the unified labels. So for those that are kind of more on the compliance side and concerned about that, we've typically had Azure Information Protection labels, which apply protections on the file itself, such as do not print, do not open on a non-domain joined machine. And then we had ADG Office 365 labels, which were more focused on governance, like retention and classification. So those are now all one thing. Finally, so you're not having to, it's just a more cohesive model for protecting your data. And then additionally, this has been out for a while, but hasn't maybe gotten the airtime it deserves, but Cloud App Security allows you to apply protections to data that's not in Office 365. So for example, you can see if people are using Box or G Suite, and then for about 7 of the cloud services, you can apply things like data loss prevention policies through the Azure Information Protection labels to protect data that's actually not even sitting in a Microsoft service. So I'm looking forward to seeing them expand that, because I think Office 365 and Azure have kind of a leading model for protecting data. Let's apply that as we can to other cloud services as well. So one place to administer. Why not?
When on the labels, what was the roadmap on that? Is it out, or what did they say?
Well, it's been in private preview since March, and so now I think it's in public preview, is my understanding. And I don't know when general availability is, but I'm sure it'll be soon, because it's not something they're just starting to test. It's been out privately, been testing for a while.
Cool.
The missing piece, when it will become, I think, really useful. Don't get me wrong, they're already great for content services, but what they need to do is match it to the business app side too, right? So Dynamics already has this concept of field level security profiles, and you're right, Erica, it's frustrating to see these different approaches. So consolidation is great. It sounds like they took a first great step. It will be really great if anybody is listening to see it across the SaaS offerings, like everything else that they're doing now. They're trying to be consistent, so that would be wonderful to see.
Agree.
So one of the things I thought was really kind of cool, and really kind of one of those also the questions I had, was all the changes and things they're doing with Microsoft Search.
Okay.
No longer is there the silos of search where, okay, I have to search SharePoint, I have to search my email, and well, then we sort of got the OneDrive search included in SharePoint search because it's really SharePoint. But now the point is the search in and of itself and the content that's stored in Office 365 is going to be pervasive. It's going to be available to you in your actual Office application, so you can start embedding things directly from the app and do searches instead of having to, oh, okay, now I got to go copy these pieces out. We're going to get it more integrated into the mobile app. And also, the Office 365 search is going to be available from your actual desktop machine. So I don't have to go out to Office 365 to go find somebody's phone number. I can say, okay, on my Windows machine, hit the Windows key, start typing their name, and I've got their contact information. And one of the cool things they're also talking about is they're also going to be releasing location functionality as part of their people search. So that way they can say, okay, here is the map of where this person sits in the building. And they're including building searches as well as one of the options you can include. Like being able to figure out where somebody sits and do all those sort of things, like, okay, now this is cool. I actually can add value to the organization just with some simple changes like this. And there's also SharePoint Spaces, but that one we talked about for the SPC, but they actually do a pretty good job with that, with improving that one and making things a little more resilient and working out a lot better. So they had next to the community area, they had an immersion zone for like all of the mixed reality stuff. So they had SharePoint Spaces, and they also had the Security and Compliance Center in mixed reality. I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. So they're kind of demoing some of the things they're working on, even data visualizations. They're working it's not into SharePoint Spaces yet. They kind of have like a standalone demo they would do, where you actually can take, they're loading in data, kind of like a Power BI in 3D, that you can actually load in the data, interact with it, move it around, adjust it, and kind of view it from all these different angles, and it just works. And it's kind of the way they had it set up was pretty kind of cool.
Yeah.
I agree. I actually became more sold, if you will, on Spaces at Ignite for multiple reasons. You know, I think from an architecture standpoint, you know, we have to acknowledge that this newest generation will live in a virtual world, right? That's why Microsoft invested in Minecraft a few years ago, right? They know that these kids that at 5 and 6 and 7 now, they're entering into virtual worlds and they're comfortable there, right? I'm not, you know, a lot of my friends are not, you know, and so I hear pushback and they're like, where's the use cases? Like, really, come on, Paul, right? And again, I just have to remind you that there is this younger generation behind us. And there's a reason I think this VR stuff, it dovetails and follows nicely with the Minecraft investment, right? It's just about this third world experience. So I think when you start there, and then you add the fact that they actually have, Erica, you were talking about this earlier, the fact that they made it easy, right? Mm-hmm. I loved it during the Spaces presentation. And forgive me, I forget the woman's name. She was brilliant, and how could I forget? It was Naomi. Sorry, our friend Naomi. She said, sorry, Naomi. She said, you know, I think it was her, it might have been her partner. She said, you know, with SharePoint, we started by democratizing the page, right? And then the site. And then I think she might have went on to the, you know, maybe the communication site, whatever. But now what they're trying to do is democratize MR, VR, whatever they want to call it inside Spaces. So I don't know, you put all that together, and I think, gosh, it's interesting. I like it.
Ryan, you're talking about the Microsoft Search. I believe it was Naomi Moneypenny that gave one of the major sessions on that as well. So if y'all are interested in looking at that session, that would just be go to ignite.microsoft.com, look at sessions, you look for Naomi Moneypenny. She had like 6 or 7 or 8 sessions. Yeah. There was one she gave on Microsoft Search, and that's one of her primary roles right now at Microsoft, is to help lead that. So she definitely is one of the leaders of that. And she's talking about it. She's talking about it because she knows what she is helping build over there. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I think the Microsoft Search, the Bing for Business stuff is going to be interesting. It's going to really change the way that we're able to work with our data, and I'm fascinated to see how it works. It's taking time for sure. I mean, they've been announced that stuff a little while back, and it's taking time to happen, but they're trying to do a lot, shall we say. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, the Bing search is kind of cool because you actually can go ahead and enable it right now.
Yeah.
You actually go enable it for your organization actually, and they have it set up so you can do a preview as well. So within your own organization, you can enable it to say, hey, we want to turn this on. Mm-hmm. It's only available to these people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. I think some of the announcements for me was, in a sense, what was so cool is just the volume of lots of little changes that we've been asking for. Again, I saw that just in the SharePoint keynote, just so many things. And there were like little things that I thought was really cool. The new copy and paste from your clipboard directly into your OneDrive. I mean, I think that's just so cool that you don't have to like try to save a file and then go ahead and put it in your OneDrive. You can just put it in your clipboard and paste it right in, and OneDrive's now smart enough to take that, turn it into a file, put it in your OneDrive. I thought that was just super cool. Ryan, you'd already mentioned page layouts. That was a really cool thing to see where in the classic SharePoint development world that we've been in, our clients have always asked for page layouts. They want to control the way that a page might get created to provide a more unified experience, a more cohesive experience for the end users. Because not every user should be able to do anything they want. It can just cause a Wild West with not the consistency you're looking for. And so I'm really excited to see page layouts come out. A whole bunch of other cool stuff in SharePoint for sure. Too much nitty gritty. I don't want to have to go into every. It's like go watch the session. Everything there is kind of cool.
To build on your point, I mean, they've picked they're getting more clear on their core scenarios, and they're really delivering on a great user experience for those scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just that. I think it's really good, and I expect them to expand, of course. And that's like another sort of seeing them deliver in the cloud world that we live in, where we are getting these continual updates. It's not every 3 years we get a big, huge thing. It's they say we're going to do it, and they do, and they are delivering it. Now, some of it's not as quick as we want. I get that, but they are working on it, and just in interacting with the product groups and having the interactions with them consistently, they care and they are working on this. It's just it seems much different than like 4 or 5 years ago where it was just every 3 years we saw a release. The other big announcements that I saw were we're going back to the same things was around Teams and what Microsoft Teams, how its evolution is continuing to become. I still love that line you used, Erica, that single pane. The new features that we're getting there, I think, are pretty sophisticated. The Teams meetings up to 10,000 users are able to join, I think, is just pretty fascinating. The interaction with the Teams allows for document collaboration directly within the Teams client, so that you're able to open up a Word doc. So I might be working with someone, I might be working on a Word doc with Michael, let's say, on my team, and we can open it up in Teams. We can both be working on the same document in Teams. We can see each other working on it, and on the right-hand side, we can still have a chat based around that document that's stored within Teams. And the other thing that I thought was really cool within Teams, and these are all simple little things, but they're still cool, is that you can do screen sharing without having to have the audio, because sometimes I'm chatting with Michael and I just need to show him something, but I don't need to actually talk to him. I don't need a formal meeting. I just need to be able to show him, hey, here's what it is that I'm doing, and I can just point it out. I think that was some cool little stuff. And I know these are small like announcements, but to me that was sort of like the big announcement. There were so many little things for me. It's delivering on the promise that Microsoft's been asking for, and I'm starting to see more of that story come together.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of good stuff and a lot of little things that just kind of add all together. You're like, at the end of the week, you're like, holy cow, what did I just learn here?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of good stuff.
You know, it's interesting, Eric, because I'm not involved with the Teams and collab stuff nearly as much as you are at this point. But what's interesting is I am beginning to use it more as a user, right, to run my business on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree with you. Some of these announcements that some people are calling smaller announcements, you know, I actually have been finding some of them really useful as an end user and as somebody that's trying to actually, you know, build a business on this stuff as well. So I want to add that. That's good stuff.
Let's keep moving on there, Michael.
Alrighty, yes. Didn't want to interrupt you guys if there was any more coming. So
You know, I'm sure we'll come
Excellent,
back to this one too, because the buzz was the biggie for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, great. So next we move on to the sessions, or how I stayed awake after partying until 2 a.m. So there's so much to learn when you go to Ignite. There's all the sessions running around. There's just so much going on. So let's talk about some of the topics that were brought up in sessions. You know, there's also a lot of stuff, like you guys were saying earlier, going on in the expo hall. So like, what were some of the things we were talking about? What were popular sessions? Give us your thoughts, guys.
Yeah, so away from the keynotes and stuff, what are some fun sessions that you all attended? Some fun sessions that you saw? I've been trying to watch some of the videos now, so that's the really cool thing. Was a lot of these sessions, most of them were recorded and are available, so you can watch them, which I just love. So what are some of the other cool sessions you went to, or who are some of the speakers we should really look out for, or is there any sessions you'd recommend that people should go watch besides, say, the keynote stuff?
I have two favorite sessions.
Cool.
So the first one was actually a theater session, so 20 minutes long. It was called something like build a SharePoint portal site in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's like just so well done. Like just watching it, I had so many like aha moments about what you can really do with these tools when they're being explained to you so quickly and at such a high level. It's kind of like, oh yeah, it sounds cool, but what does it really mean? This is the session that tells you what it means.
Do you remember who did that?
It was like 5 different people, all from the SharePoint design team.
Okay, and I don't know if they record all the theater sessions, unfortunately.
No, they did. They recorded
cool.
most of the theater sessions, and
Good.
it is online. I tweeted about it yesterday on my Twitter, if you're looking for it.
Excellent.
And then my second one, and I think this is a lot of the cool stuff, was around machine learning and AI, was around, it was kind of the keynote for security and compliance with a really long title. It's harness intelligence to implement a comprehensive information governance strategy in your organization. I had to write it down. But basically, they went through exactly how they're training the machine learning models to be able to automatically classify data in your organization. So they're going to do, of course, kind of an all-up general machine learning model for across all tenants. But more importantly, they're giving you the ability to do training for just your tenant, which is going to be way more impactful for classifying your data, I think. So for me, those are the two greatest sessions.
Nice. I enjoyed Mark Rasidovic. I might be butchering his name. If I am, I apologize. I feel like I should definitely know his name because I certainly respect a lot of the work that he does. But I have to call out the session he did on data centers. I mean, Eric, sometimes we talk about this, about what technology brings out our geek, our inner geek. And this was definitely one of them. Like seeing him go into detail about how they started building out Azure as essentially hosted servers, and then taking us through this history of how they essentially not only redesigned the modern data center several times actually, but also the servers that reside in them, you know, using things like containers and container nodes and some of the work they're doing there for deploying servers and managing them and the virtual networking. I mean, it was just an amazing session, and it is recorded. You can watch it online.
Yep.
One of my favorite parts, you might have heard me mention this, is when he talks about the server rack that they actually have 1 mile under the ocean, and they're monitoring it now, the effects of removing the environment from servers and seeing if, you know, if there's a savings there in energy and you know, and savings with cost, operational costs. So fascinating session. I have to call that one out. Thank you.
So Mark's the CTO of Azure over at Microsoft. So he's like, think about it, CTO of Azure. He helped build Azure, and he's a genius. He really is a very smart person. He's a great presenter. He's done that topic a few times, and it's really, really good and very impressive. So absolutely well worth watching, and he's engaging as well. And what they've done and what they've been able to get away with is just impressive on how good it is. I think that data center under the water, I think that's off of England, isn't it? I've heard about it.
I don't know. I'd like to find out a little bit more. You know, I find it really interesting.
I think they sunk like a shipping container kind of thing underwater, and they're trying to see what happens if you do that. Like, could you actually have a data center where the cooling is more generated by the earth rather than trying to generate it by burning fossil fuels to cool something down?
So apparently they had one server under 30 feet of water for about a year, and now they've progressed in the experiment, and they have a rack of servers that is 1 kilometer down underneath the ocean right now. And so the goal is to keep that running for 3 years and then progress from there. If you're interested in this, you know, again, for all of us geeks that are watching, there actually is a live cam. So you can actually see the live cam of the steel casing at the bottom of the ocean. Apparently it has some seaweed on it. And what's really cool is they've actually wired in some ML as well. So what they're doing is they're trying to figure out using machine learning what the impact is on the ocean, right? So, you know, on the surface, no pun intended, they're not too worried about it because they feel like there's plenty of water to dissipate the heat and it shouldn't impact the fish, etc. But they want to be sure, you know, they want to be sure. So they're implementing live machine learning on the data center under the sea, and you can watch it live on camera. Yeah. I'm sure like little microclimates could be created. So I like to see they're trying to be environmentally responsible about it, and before they just go ahead and sink a whole huge data center with 20,000 servers, it's going to create a massive amount of heat. What that's going to do, but it also makes sense too. Pardon? Can you imagine? Oh, yeah. Imagine. Like, that's where we're headed. You know, I mean, if it's not in 10 years, it'll be, I mean, that's crazy. So anyway, sorry. No, good. And I did see a couple other sessions came in at least. Alex, thank you for sharing a couple here. There's Breakout 3080, new ways to create no-code solutions with SharePoint. Yes, I did not get to see that one. I saw that one for sure, and that one looked really, really, really cool. And then if you're into the on-prem stuff, for sure, Breakout 2064, the SharePoint Server 2019 overview. That one was with Bill Bear, I'm pretty sure. So for the on-prem world, like that's, oh yeah, I think, Ryan, I think I ran into you and you were going to that session too.
I went to that one.
What do you think about that one?
I was hoping they'd actually give an official, okay, we're going to release SharePoint 2019 this day.
Okay.
Pretty much they came out with it's going to be mid-October. So it's coming soon. So we're here the 4th. Keep your eye on Twitter, I'm sure, over the next couple weeks just to see when that's officially released. But yeah, it was kind of nice to be able to see they're talking about a lot of the stuff. Anybody that's done the preview, there's no surprises there for you.
Mm-hmm.
But they did also list out as part of that session the things that actually have been deprecated into 2019 and things that were deprecated previously that have been fully removed. So it's kind of one of the few times I've seen is like when they do the release, a lot of times they say, okay, well, we're deprecate this, but now they actually said, okay, here are the things that have been deprecated, and they had a separate column that said, okay, here are the things that we're actually removing, functionality that will no longer be there in this release.
Cool.
So it's like, okay, it's kind of nice to be able to have that listed out and be able to see what the impact could be, because especially if you're setting up these different applications and systems, knowing what's going on. And no surprise for anybody, InfoPath is still on the deprecated column. So it's not dead yet, but it's deprecated.
I'm not dead yet. Yeah. So that would be the Bill Bear session on SharePoint 2019 for those of you interested in trying to track that one down.
Hey, really quick, there's just been some questions in the window.
Mm-hmm.
So to find these sessions, they are not publicly listed. You cannot just Google and find it on the internet. You have to go to the MyIgnite site. They're all YouTube videos, but they're what are called unlisted, meaning you have to have the direct URL to be able to find it, and they're not indexed in search. So you have to go to the Ignite website and then just go to the session browser, and they have tons of ways you can sort and filter and search for the different sessions, and you'll have to watch the video from the actual Ignite page.
And actually,
So
can I just give a tip? If you didn't attend the conference, what you want to do is create a technical community account, and you'll notice that you're gonna have a lot more videos displayed for you. So even though you weren't an attendee, it's not a big deal. Just go create a technical community account if you want to watch these. And my observation, you have a lot more videos available to you. So just a tip.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that URL, Erica. Yeah, I go to ignite.microsoft.com, and I get there by when you go to the session catalog, it drops you to the MyIgnite. But yes, thank you. They are on YouTube, but yes, you can't just go searching for them easily. It takes a little.
Well, and you can't just go to the Ignite YouTube page and see them. They're all unlisted.
Except the keynote, I think. I think the keynote you can, but that's it.
The keynote you can watch.
They have like 10 or 11. There's 10 or 11, I think, up on YouTube. But you're right there. I think they're all the keynotes. They were very specific about what they included. So
Ryan, I think you went to the most sessions of all of us. Like, what are some other cool ones that you and I really like this panel, by the way, as well, because we're all from different walks of life now in our professional world here. So we all have different roles, and I love it. Ryan, you're kind of like our real token end user here. I think you were there to attend a lot of the sessions. So, like, what did you think? What are some other key takeaways that you can share to our audience here?
A lot of the stuff, the things that I was kind of geeking out about is like we talked about search and spaces already. Those were kind of some cool ones, definitely worth looking into. The SharePoint stuff, all that. Some of the other stuff, and like along Erica's lines as well, the stuff they're talking about, the integrations with information protection. So one of the ones I thought was really kind of cool is they're coming out with integrated protection built into the operating system itself. So your DLP policies can flag documents that are on the user's machine. So that way, if somebody happens to download a file or create a file that has company proprietary information in it, you can control what happens to that file and where it's allowed to go. And so, it's like, for example, the demos they did is like you can have a file sitting there. Somebody tries to email it through Gmail and says, sorry, that's proprietary information. You're not allowed to do that. Do that with this. Even uploading it to different websites and things. Even all these different scenarios, they control, okay, your policies can specify, no, sorry, this is company information and we're not allowing our information to go there. So a lot of times, as an end user, we get a lot of time trying to deal with and stop people from using like personal accounts for sharing company information. Because once it gets into those personal accounts, there's no visibility on it. So I was looking at this like, okay, that's kind of some cool stuff to be able to make sure you don't get those data leakages going on. We don't get any more Edward Snowden type events going on just because somebody's pulling data off. Say, okay, it's kind of some cool stuff along those lines.
Yeah.
The significance of this is that we've actually had IRM for information rights management for a while now, and certainly the ability to enforce this on the file level through the Azure information protection policies. But if you had a protected document and you uploaded it to SharePoint, co-authoring didn't work, search didn't work. Like it basically broke everything and made SharePoint a file share. And what I assume is that now that they're together, that's fixed. I haven't 100% confirmed that myself, and I don't know if that was covered in any of the sessions.
I don't remember them mentioning those particular scenarios, but yeah, I have seen that myself as well, that IRM protected documents were, a lot of stuff were kind of out, and I don't think anybody talked about that scenario. So we'll have to get that, we'll have to play with that one.
Brian, what other sessions did you go to? I know you went to a couple.
No, a lot of the sessions I went to, I apparently ended up following Naomi around for quite a bit, just because she had a lot of the cool stuff that I was interested in. Like, oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's a good one. And honestly, there a lot of times, just going back to, there are some sessions that I really wanted to sit in on that I ended up not making it to, just because I actually spent some time in the expo hall getting answers to actual questions that I had and providing feedback directly to the product teams themselves. So there's a couple of scenarios where I'm talking with some people on the product team, like, okay, what about this scenario? And just mentioning some things with them was like, that's actually a good use case. I'm gonna write that down. So actually, it's not just okay getting your own answer, just be able to directly provide feedback to the teams working on it. It was kind of cool. So I was like, okay, provide feedback to the streams team and get some stuff with Azure Active Directory and all these different groups. It's like they're all just that one little spot. So you say, okay, well, let me hit these guys. You turn around, I'm like, oh, I got something for these guys. I got something from here. I wanted to get a question from this person, so you kind of end up spending almost an entire afternoon just kind of bouncing around, getting all my questions resolved and providing feedback on them.
Yeah, it was,
so that was kind of awesome. But yeah,
it's fun hanging out with you at the conference as well, because Blizzard is such a unique organization, right? And so there's so many teams that are interested in your perspective on different things. So it's fun walking through the exhibition hall with you, and you're right, you're always getting tagged, like, hey, come look at this.
It is a huge expo hall. I didn't even get to the whole thing in all 4 days that I was there. I just couldn't. It was just so big. But yeah, going back to that point, Brian, about just the value, one of the big values, at least to Ignite for me, is the networking opportunities, because the content, you can get to a lot of it. When you miss content, you can go back and watch it later. The couple sessions I went to that I really enjoyed, so I was following around Sue Hanley more because I really find what she's doing around the hub management, information architecture, navigation planning, et cetera, to be really important to the clients that I work with. I can't recommend any of her sessions more than the other. They were all really outstanding. She did one with Mark Cashman, so that's Susan Hanley. You can look her up as well. She did a 45-minute session with Mark Cashman on hub sites that I thought was really fascinating, hub site planning, because hubs are a new big deal in SharePoint, but people are kind of confused, like what's possible with hubs and what's the best way to do it. And she wrote the white paper for Microsoft on how best to use hub sites. So I thought her sessions were fascinating. And in a sense, if we keep going on this topic, we're probably going to leave 3 people out we didn't intend to leave out. So there really were just outstanding sessions for sure. I couldn't tell you more to watch just because there were so many. I'd look at the different subject matters, go look at the catalog, and just watch the ones that do look interesting to you. Cool.
Awesome.
Moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. So that actually kind of gets, that's the end of the main stuff. We're going to get into the Q&A now. One question that came in from someone that Eric knows very well, from our friend David Overfield. When will Microsoft Teams replace SharePoint?
I did not pay him to ask that question.
For anybody who doesn't know, that's Eric's brother.
Well, and the question is from Christopher.
Yes. Anyone want to address that one?
I honestly don't think it ever will replace it. But like Eric said, it's becoming a pain for being able to access everything, not just SharePoint. You've got SharePoint, you've got Yammer, you've got the ability to embed these different custom systems. We can embed SAP, we can embed all these other tools, so it becomes a centralized repository to be able to access everything that you need to do on your regular basis. So SharePoint used to have that role, but it was kind of trying to integrate the different pieces was tricky. But now with Teams, it's so easy to be able to add that integration that it's just transparent and seamless to the user. So it's data. I think SharePoint's going to, in some instances, will become kind of a data store for some teams. and then you'll have your communication and sites and all those sort of things. But for the teamwork, it's going to be a place to store things a lot of times and then access all your tools through Teams. So I don't know that it ever will fully replace it, but it's going to be a nice consolidation point.
Mm-hmm.
I have a one-word answer. Just a one-word answer.
Go for it.
GitHub.
Okay. Go ahead, Erica.
I was going to say, I think it does replace SharePoint in one aspect, which is, you remember like in the SharePoint 2007 to 2013 days when everybody wanted a project site template and you'd spin up this whole site for your project and then people would use like the document library? I think it replaces those sites.
Yeah, and rightly so. It definitely should
Thank
replace
God.
those ones.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's want to maintain those anymore.
So an interesting comment. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah, I have the inverse of Paul's response, because the reason why this is kind of funny is that this question is coming up in my household all the time. I mean, this is the life that I live right now, and I really enjoy trying to help customers solve these problems of how to communicate and collaborate. And it's a business owner thing. I live this every day, every hour of the day, and I enjoy it. It's fun. So this topic comes up a lot of what teams, how Teams and SharePoint are working together. I agree completely with Ryan that there's I don't think replacements is the wrong word to use. SharePoint's not going anywhere. It's still a huge powerhouse. Definitely, Eric, as you said, there are components of SharePoint that we used to use that SharePoint wasn't good at. It wasn't really good for that thing, but it was such a powerful platform, you could make it work. SharePoint couldn't do anything, but it doesn't necessarily need to. Again, Eric, as you had said, that Microsoft said, we're going to deliver these things really well on the new SharePoint platform, and they're delivering. They're not trying to do everything. They dumped public-facing sites for a reason. It wasn't worth it. Let's focus on what we do well, and they're delivering them. So SharePoint still is going to have a long future as being the central repository for communication and collaboration for files in particular, files, assets, lists, libraries, things like that. Teams is never going to do that. It's not supposed to. It has no reason to. Now, never say never, I don't know, but I would be disappointed if a primarily like a chat channel all of a sudden said, oh, hey, we're going to create list libraries and store files and take over OneDrive. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that Teams is going to be a great window. It's going to be the way that we surface things. I can see Teams replacing certain things. Now, I might go farther than some of you might say, and I'd love to hear some feedback on me on this, where Teams might become the central portal that people will go to. It's where they'll live more often than not. And then SharePoint will be used along with many other tools. It will be used to hold your files. It will be used to host pages, applications, portal components, but they might be then surfaced in tabs or whatnot. I think, Michael, as you were going to say, so a question just came in, or comment, that Teams is frustratingly harder to use in SharePoint for adding links. There are lots of problems with Teams, as much as I love it, and we at PixelMill use it daily. I do everything I can to no longer email. I want to use Teams, in particular for internal. But yes, there are some things where Teams just, it doesn't work quite well yet. Teams is still crashing a little bit for me, and I think it crashes more for other people, and it still can be slow sometimes. So there's things that Microsoft definitely needs to improve upon. But the easy answer is it's not going to replace it, I think, ever, but at least in a lot of our lifetimes with Microsoft and Teams and SharePoint, excuse me. I think that we will have moved on to new technology by the time SharePoint's replaced or anything like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, so
Everyone
much going on with
me
Teams.
completely, or
I do.
I'm trying to throw some softballs there. Maybe we can get some discussion. Like, no, he's wrong. That's not going to happen.
No, I would agree. I would add some clarity around. So I don't want to scare people. When I'm talking about GitHub, there are some people that think in the future it might make a really great place to store the underlying data instead of SQL Server, right? So I'm not trying to. That wouldn't change necessarily Teams as we know it and SharePoint as we know it, because everything else could stay the same, right? That's complete speculation on my part. But here's where it comes from. This is interesting. This is public. It was on Twitter, so I'm going to share it on the camera. So my new neighbor is Ray Ozzie. So Ray Ozzie sold, I think, 3 companies to Microsoft, including Groove, which eventually turned into some of this stuff we're talking about right now on this camera. At Ignite, I caught him sending Jeff Teeper a tweet, and it's on Twitter, so I'm okay sharing it. And it was a screenshot. It was a screenshot of a UI where you could essentially right-click and send anything, any asset, to a GitHub repository. And it had that baked-in SharePoint Office 365 look.
Wow.
I thought that was really interesting. Again, just go search Ray Odyssey's Twitter feed. It's public, you know. So
Wow.
I screenshotted that right away.
In case it ever disappears.
Yeah, exactly. He might
Well,
be
you
working
know,
on his fourth company.
when that happens, you can add GitHub as a tab in Teams.
Exactly. Well, and I think you already can too, but like not to that level.
Yeah,
But yeah, exactly, Eric. I agree. And that's what I love so much about Teams is that the extensibility methods that are available to us, I think, are easier, quicker than what we could have done or could do in SharePoint.
Yep. We can also add Yammer to Teams now, so
Oh,
there's
that's
always
true.
that.
Do we want to address the what's the lifespan of Yammer question, or we'll just leave that for another day?
Nope, we're going to address it. Guys, what's the lifespan of Yammer? Go.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Okay. So the reason we're all laughing is Yammer's just kind of always been its own separate little silo, and I think it's kind of getting left behind as all of these other Microsoft technologies integrate together. Yammer is still off on its own. So the two announcements were that finally all Yammer documents will now be in a SharePoint site.
That's good.
And then the Yammer web part that you can add to a modern SharePoint page.
Yep.
But still, that's like 5 years ago integration. So hopefully there'll be more soon.
Now, in Yammer itself, it provides a very valuable resource, and I work now with a couple of clients who these are larger organization, food manufacturing companies with thousands and tens of thousands of employees, and they love Yammer. And the reason why they love Yammer is because the CEO is able to quickly do a one-to-many communication and send out, hey, here's what the industry news is saying, here's what's happening, and they're able to create a channel to communicate with the organization that's not as formal as an email, and it allows that leadership to be able to communicate back, like when people are sharing their cat videos or something, they can then reply to it or they can like it, and there's in this more flat hierarchy that we're seeing in a lot of organizations where we're trying to break down some of those barriers. It's encouraging. The employees like the fact that, wow, leadership is spending time with us. Maybe, not a lot. They're not wasting time per se, but they're helping us get an overview of what's going on in the organization, and we like that. Now, that cat video thing has come up in multiple organizations. That's one of the issues with Yammer is that there are these channels that people don't know how to use. They don't know how to unfilter it. They don't know how to filter it, and so some people just don't want the cat videos. And so it provides a valuable tool for the one-to-many communication. And as Microsoft likes to say, Dan Holm, the most that I hear is there's this whole inner loop, outer loop idea of who are you communicating with, and Yammer provides an outer loop extended network communication platform. I would argue that if Teams ever grew its Teams and channel aspects to have a one-to-many ability in certain channels, then it could negate the need for Yammer, but that's...
Have you ever been in a team with like 800 people? Because I have, and it was horrible.
And I understand that, and I also want to say, like, I'm not giving anything away. I haven't been told this, so don't say, oh, well, he's heard something. No. I'm just making this up. But yes, and that's my team complains about that same idea when I say it. But I would argue, isn't that still what a Yammer feed is, or what a Yammer channel is that a Yammer group is still a quote, a channel with your whole company who has access to it? If you could put that governance or rule sets around a channel within a quote all company team or something, this is a whole nother chat. Like, I don't want to get into that kind of level of detail. But
I agree with you, Eric. I just think if you look at it logically from a software architecture standpoint, there's just something wrong with having two platforms, one to do inner circle, one to do outer circle. That's marketing speak for me. We haven't fixed things yet, right? We haven't. And I'll even go as far as I'm starting to wonder if Yammer is essentially the BlackBerry of collab, right? Like, did Microsoft basically just sell a bunch? I am, that's okay. I'm just saying, did Microsoft sell a bunch of this to the governments around the world, and now they have to support it for 10 years, like BlackBerry devices? Because that's what it's starting to look like a little bit to me. I'm just saying, realistically. And having two different tools, one for inner loop, one out the outer, I don't know. That sounds like something broke to me. But that's, again, just my opinion. Speculation.
We'll see. Yammer, as I said, clients love it. Go ahead,
My
Eric.
favorite use case of Yammer has always been internally at Microsoft, and they said this in one of the sessions, so I'm allowed to say it, but they have this group called Curmudgeonville that is literally just for complaining.
I need that URL.
It could be like about cafeteria food. It could be like you can literally complain about anything. And that what they found is that like people actually like feel better after airing their concerns. And if you're the person who's in charge of that area, you can get some valuable feedback. And I mean, people typically keep it, you know, work appropriate in terms of their complaints. They're not just spouting off cuss words or anything.
Sure.
One thing I'd say as far as Yammer is concerned, it is nice to see them actually working more on integrations now, because it kind of seemed like Yammer was just kind of sitting as its own silo for a long time. So coming out of Ignite, it's nice to be able to see they are doing those integration steps. And kind of what its long-term future is, I don't know, but it is nice to be able to see that they are including, at least in the near future, and being able to allow us to be able to integrate and do more with it.
I agree. I'm still using both.
Oh yeah. As we're waiting for more questions to come in, if any questions come in, there's another topic I wanted to address that I saw from Ignite, just hearing a lot of the buzz and going to a lot of the sessions, is the amount of stuff that Microsoft is baking into their products. I think is really cool. And it's also kind of interesting or fascinating to look from the ISV or even the SI, but really the ISV market. An easy example is that Microsoft in that SharePoint keynote, they announced that they're updating their migration tool. And that migration tool is looking pretty sophisticated. And I see that causing headwind, shall we say, to some of the big migration companies that I like. I like AvePoint, I like ShareGate, I like others. I think they're really great, sophisticated tools. And I think that the tools, the third-party tools, are not almost always provide like a more rich experience, but a lot of our clients for sure are looking at these tools that Microsoft's provided and said, well, that's good enough. You know, I'll make that work. And now the ISVs are going to have those issues. I'm seeing that as well for sure. As a SI, I like that my clients can now utilize out-of-the-box SharePoint, and we can utilize out-of-the-box SharePoint to deliver some sophisticated portals and solutions. And we're not needing the canned internet solutions as much because we have the out-of-the-box tools, the rich editing environments, the ability to create site designs and site scripts and whatnot, and hopefully soon page layouts, etc. Where we won't be needing additional tools to do it. And a lot of our customers can now maintain a lot of the stuff that we build for them on their own, which is really a good thing because that allows us to help focus on delivering a really good strategy and solution rather than just focusing on developing a component and trying to maintain something that's going to break in 3 years. Anyone have a contrary thought or a supporting thought, or what do you think about what Microsoft's been doing, in particular, like in the SharePoint space?
Can I take this one? Because you know, we're for an ISV and all. So here's how I kind of think about it. So how many users does Microsoft and SharePoint have now? It's like 1 billion at least, right?
It's a lot.
So, I mean, when you're designing these things, like let's just take records management, because that's what we do at Record Point. When they're designing a records management solution for 1 billion users, they're going to maybe hit 80% of the functionality you need, right? So mostly focused, yeah, if you're lucky. So 80% of 1 billion is still 200 million people that aren't being served by that feature set.
Sure.
So for example, we only go after the highly regulated industries and the government because they have such strict records management needs that a general purpose built tool is never going to be what they need. They need something way more specific built for their audience. And hey, you know, an audience of 200 million, I'm okay with those odds in terms of being able to float a company.
Those are good numbers, sure, absolutely. Good opportunities for sure.
So I know a lot of times as part of some migrations we're working on, we've evaluated using the Microsoft provided migration tool.
Okay.
And it does some scenario, like some basic scenarios, yeah, it handles. But there's some things where you get any more involved, like if you need to migrate workflows or any of those sort of things, that migration tool doesn't do it yet. Will it do it at some point in time? Who knows, maybe. But at the current point in time, it just doesn't. So if you're just wanting just to pick up your content and move it over, cool. I know some of the other tools out there actually do a little more processing and allow you to take like Nintex workflows example and move them from one environment to another, and it does the translation and fixes the differences between versions, which the out-of-the-box one doesn't do yet. So I know there's still some features that it doesn't do yet to make it a viable option for a majority of people, but it is getting a lot closer. They're adding in more and more functionality, and along those same lines, the internet and box type solutions, it's getting more and more that it can do without needing some of those other tools. And like Erica said, unless you're in those scenarios where you have specific needs that those tools don't meet, or like the out of the box doesn't meet, then you can start going with some of these other providers and be able to say, hey, this will get me what I need, and then you can carry on. So I think it's nice. Microsoft is starting to encroach in on some of their market share, but there's still enough of it there that I think those companies are going to be okay. And then even hearing some of them talk, a lot of them are even also just kind of diversifying just because Microsoft has stepped in a little bit, which I think will make their businesses more healthy because they actually have more options and more sources of revenue. So it's not like, oh, okay, they have the one thing that they do and that's it. And then if somebody comes and takes it over, now they're host.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of use cases that Microsoft can just, that they can't address, as Erica said. They can't create a tool for everybody. There's going to be plenty of use cases where they're very sophisticated and you need a dedicated tool that's really has a much richer interface for more specific kind of use cases. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I agree. I would just add that, this is just our industry, right? I mean, we do go through software cycles where products mature, right? They start in an early state, and then we go into this reciprocal process where we're or iterative process, where we're getting a product to maturity, and then we go from there, right? Mm-hmm. And great companies, they either adapt or they don't, mm-hmm. right? And thankfully, most of our friends, have been able to adapt, but that's just the reality. And the other, the good side of this is that's the way it's supposed to work. Like, we want things to get better so that we can free up our time to work on some of the new stuff that will add value, right? Yeah. Like, Erica, I'm listening, and Eric, listening to you guys talk about some of this new stuff in DLP, right? And I, in the back of my head, I started thinking, gosh, what an opportunity, because DLP might have meant one thing when we were still on-prem. It was important then in industries like healthcare and finance, right? Preventing data leakage, et cetera. But I would submit that's, more so important than ever now with the cloud, right? Because now we're literally about just sort of, our data is up there, so it's even more important, I would submit. So, yeah, I think it's okay, though. And I think hopefully most of our the companies adapt. And what I'm excited about is it freeing up some time to work on these things like the DLP, the ML, machine learning is another, and all these other great features they talk about. Mm-hmm. My 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, you're completely right. I mean, I had a couple people walk up to me and ask, like, hey, there's so many great announcements about compliance. Aren't you guys worried? And I was like, no, of course not. They're just giving us more building blocks that we don't have to build now, so we can focus on the value-added things for our customer base.
Gotcha.
Definitely. As we're wrapping up here, we have one more question that came in from our friend Joseph Ackerman. Erica, you were kind of responding to him as well. So the general question is, will any of these products migrate publishing pages? Erica asked, do you have custom page layout too? And then Joseph replied, yes, client is hopefully moving to modern.
So the other reason I'm chuckling is because Eric and I used to work together in Microsoft IT as consultants, and this was literally our job: is how do we migrate the custom page layouts in the MSW site?
Yeah, and I can answer somewhat. Those tools will migrate those publishing pages, but they're not going to convert them to modern.
Yeah.
And a large part of that is just the web parts and the spaces and the options are so different that anybody writing a tool that's going to handle that translation, that's going to take a lot of work in order to get
Yeah, the answer for that, and they had so many pages. I don't know, how thousands, tens of thousands. Moved them all manually.
Yeah. I'm not aware of any tool that'll do a mapping from classic publishing to a modern page at all.
Yeah. Especially a lot of the web parts, they purely won't migrate because they can't. I know that the P&P community has looked at considering using P&P provisioning to help kind of grab an export of what it is that your pages might have had, or to pull pages using P&P core to go and grab it and then translate that over into modern. But it's a very manual process. So you have to set it all up and know what you're doing and parse stuff, and it's pretty ugly. So unfortunately, Joseph, no. And I don't see that coming anytime soon from anybody, if at all.
And I don't see Microsoft even producing anything to do it either. If somebody third party, somebody may do something community based, cool.
Yeah.
But Microsoft, like you said, Eric, is so complex. I don't know that anybody's going to take that on.
Yeah.
Just because now the support issue comes in, it's like, okay, well, now I have this use case. We have this scenario. We made this customization. How do we migrate it?
Have a custom
Well,
web.
like, the other thing was the telemetry around people that actually had invested in custom page layouts. It was actually not used very much at all, and so there just wasn't a big enough population to worry about it.
I did not know that. I wouldn't have said that. I know we're almost out of time here.
Yeah, we are just at about that time. One last thing I wanted to say is if anybody who hasn't heard the news yet, Ignite is coming back to Orlando for the third year in a row next year, 2019, but they're moving it to November as opposed to having it the last week of September. Any thoughts on that, guys? Any reasoning why they're moving it back a little bit? You guys know about that?
Talking with family that lives there, they just say that's probably a better time to do it. One, it's not as hot.
Yay.
Yeah.
Two,
Thank
not
God.
as
Yeah.
Three, the risk of rain is less because that's more into their dry season. So I think all around weather is a better option. I don't know if that's what they're going for, but I mentioned that to my family. They're like, oh, yeah, that'd be a better time of year. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think about that.
Last year it almost got canceled because of a hurricane. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
So which technically, I think even in November, we're still technically hurricane season, but.
Yeah, it gets easier though. I think you're right, Eric, though, because maybe they had to lock in 2 years in advance, right? So they had the hurricane scare, they had to meet one more contract, and now they're moving it out a month. I don't know, just guessing.
Yeah.
Sure.
All
I
right.
have one more thing in closing, Eric. I don't think I meant to give a shout out to the work that the SPFX team is doing as well. We didn't have time to talk about that here, but they made some great announcements, and I've been just so impressed with the state of SharePoint development right now. And so I just wanted to give them a shout out, and you can find the announcements online. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, we skipped them.
That might be a good topic for a future webinar, the state of SharePoint framework. I know a lot of you guys are pretty passionate about that, so maybe we'll talk about that.
Cool.
We are at our time, so I'm gonna close this down here. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Our speakers, thank you so much. You guys are amazing. Oh, lovely to have you guys back. Paul, welcome to the show. I know this is your first time. Thanks for joining us. Maybe we'll try to get you back for another time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any follow-up questions, you can hit us up at PixelMill team or hashtag PixelMill webinars. You can find all these crazy cats on Twitter or their own personal sites talking about, they all speak a lot as well. They all travel everywhere, so there's a good chance that if you go to a SharePoint or Microsoft-related event, you will find them, and they will be more than happy to answer your questions or just chat with you, give you a high five, all that fun stuff. Anyway, enough of my blabbering on. Thank you so much again for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will chat with you more soon, all right?
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Bye all.